Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is the second video in our brand new series, the Engine Teardown Marathon, where we're taking various different year model engines with various different mileages on them, and we're going to tear them down and compare wear patterns and look for any issues on the inside of each one. The first engine up for teardown belongs to Mr. Michael Bleich out of Michigan, a 2007 CVO Ultra Classic, and of course it is a 110. So let's get started. Stick with us. Before we tear each engine down, I want to go through some of the common known problems with each particular year model engine. I do this for a couple of reasons. One, to see if the law of averages applies to these particular engines. The other is, I get a lot of comments and people, thinking every Harley Davidson is buying one as a recipe for disaster, and that's not the case. Just because a problem is common doesn't mean that it's necessarily widespread. So I think a great way to do this is for us to discuss the known issues with these year models and then open them up and see what's on the inside and just see what's happening. Now, Mr. Bleich's 110 here, this engine's going to become a 117. It is a full and complete Skunk Works package from the bottom up. Crank, temp and bearing conversion, our billet cylinders. We're going to work heads, we're do all kind of magic in this, and then of course we're doing a DD7 transmission, bulletproofing the primary, everything else. So it's a full, complete Skunk Works build. Now I'm going to handle these teardowns for the sake of time a little differently than I've done them in the past. Now we've got plenty of videos that show very detailed teardowns, every component at a time. What we're going to do instead is basically just start an operation and then work our way through it, and I'll show you any deficiencies along the way. So there's going to be some cut and edits along here, but we'll discuss each deficiency or concern as we go forward with the teardown. So let's get started on this one. You can smell it. One of his biggest complaints was how hot this engine got. Now, it is widely known in the 2007 year models was one of the first years of, one of the worst years of crankshaft issues for Harley Davidson. So my guess is when we get to that point, we're gonna check run out on pinion shaft and see what we have there. The common issue was an excessive amount of run out. Let's see what we have. The other was engine heat. When I crack the rocker box, you can smell it. The oil is putrid, burned smell. But I can also look into the ports on the heads and see the ports have almost turned gold, as have the valve guides, the valve guides and the valves. So yes, this engine was getting extremely, extremely hot. And you can even tell a bit of the gold discoloration here on the rockers. Now when you're removing the rocker supports, you always want to make sure to do it just a little bit at a time so that you don't get the rocker support in a bind. You basically want to make sure that you have lash in your push rods and that your valves are fully seated before you just take the bolts out. So just do it a little bit at a time. Now let's take a look at the rockers. So you can see how gold everything is in here. I don't see an excessive amount of wear on the rocker tips. The pockets look good. Yeah, the rocker arms themselves are wearing pretty good. One thing I want to take a look at, and can be a good indication if there are potentially any sumping issues, is to see how much oil is in the breathers. Now the breathers look to be remarkably clean. Slide this one back together. And that's pretty much normal and what I would expect to see. A little bit of oil saturation here, but not too much at all. So we'll slide that back together and let's look on the other cylinder. This one is saturated a bit more than the front one. Let's have a little bit more oil in there, but again, you know, it's saturated pretty good, but not outrageously unusual. What we can see is the color of the oil, and it's burnt. We can see the thickness of it too. So yes, this engine's getting pretty hot. Okay, another thing I want you guys to take a look at. See this area right here, this dark area? That's exhaust, combustion pressure, if you will. It's sooty. So he has a compression release leak, it appears. And yes, this compression release is finger tight, loose. So he obviously had a leak on his compression release. Now, what could have happened here, let's look at the chain of events. Leak in a compression release would have created a lean fuel mixture. Lean fuel mixture could very well be what cooked this engine and the reason why this thing was running so hot. So, compression release was loose. More than likely, I have another theory. When we get inside here, we're probably going to see that front cylinder is scorched. Piston slap was another common issue with the 110s. Excessive piston skirt to cylinder wall clearance, and that would create an inconsistent tapping noise, and then especially during cold starts. So yeah, we can see here this compression release has been leaking for quite a long time. We can see all the soot that's on that. So there's that. Let's see what the rear one. We didn't see that on the rear, but let's go ahead and take the rear one out. Going in this were real sticky, that carbon could destroy the threads in the head. So we have to be mindful of that during the teardown. It is sometimes, again, surprises when you tear these things down. Sometimes you find issues that the owner didn't even know he had. He's running E3 spark plugs on it, and we can see quite a bit of carbon on there, and we also see some deposits on the ground electrode, which be an indication of oil infiltrating on the top side of the piston. It could be from valve guides leaking, valve stem seals, leaking through the guides. Could also be a little bit of blow by. This cylinder, as hot as it probably got because of the compression release, we may have some blow by in that cylinder as well, simply because it cooked the cylinder. All right, not terrible at all. The top of the piston, I'll show you the pistons here shortly. The top of the piston is wet, moist. That follows up with the deposits that we saw on the spark plugs. It's oil, basically, oil carbon on the top. And yeah, so let's see what we got on the front. Oh, and that front cylinder is cooked. You can see, again, a little bit more carbon on the front one here, but because of that loose compression release and a lean mixture, this front cylinder has an absolute mirror glaze to it, which explains some blow-by, some oil consumption, and whew, man, the smell of that oil. And the cylinder is basically gold. on the inside. So let's see. There we've got another issue here. Again, not really uncommon. This stud here. Now, if you noticed when I took this bolt loose, it seemed to be a little loose, but the bolt broke loose of the stud pretty much right away. The cylinder stud has backed out. Now, it could be because this cylinder got so hot. It gets hot enough, the Loctite breaks loose, and then that cylinder stud can begin to back out. So this, in a short amount of time, I'm actually surprised he didn't already have a head gasket leak. I can, wow, I can smell fuel too. So I'm curious to know on this one, I'm not sure if Michael had ever had anybody tune the bike. If somebody had done some tuning on it and was tuning on top of that compression release leaking, they would have poured a tremendous amount of fuel to it to try to counteract that, not knowing that the compression release was leaking. If a person had done a cylinder pressure or a leak down test, they would have known right away that that was an issue. So that being said, there is a tremendous amount, if we notice oil here on top of the piston, we have a tremendous amount of oil here on the front, and also a lot of those deposits. If you've watched our How to Read a Spark Plug video where I talked about the white crystals that develop on the ground electrode of a spark plug, I would say that would mirror what you would see on a piston. So you see right here, these chunks are actually white, again, white deposits from oil infiltration, and it's just piled up in the valve relief here on this piston, and we can see how much oil is on the top of it. Again, this cylinder just running way too hot. You may not be able to see it on camera there, but that cylinder is glazed over. There's virtually no crosshatch remaining in the middle. Just completely slick and glazed over, and of course you see the gold coloration around the edges here. This cylinder is cooked. Absolutely cooked. It is a little better than the front. Obviously the front was running quite a bit hotter than this one, but there's virtually zero crosshatch left from mid-stroke down on this cylinder. Plus it does have some pretty deep grooves and scratches in there, so that cylinder's cooked as well. The other thing is we had a leak at the rear, at the cylinder base O-ring here. You can see that amount of oil. That leak has been there for, oh, shouldn't have done that. Stinks. That oil's been there for quite a long time. It's been leaking for quite a long time. Yeah, see that excessive amount of white crystalline there and all that debris and how much oil on top of the piston. All right, you can see on this one we've got very similar carbon deposits built up inside the intake valve relief there. Oh, yeah, it's quite a bit of oil. And black, as you can see. Okay, the tappets themselves don't look terrible. Roller looks to be in pretty good shape. Again, roller looks to be in pretty good shape. The bores are, we'll find out about size here in a minute. Okay, now this rear exhaust does have quite a bit of frosting on the roller. Not unusual. And the rear intake has a little bit more than the front. This one's stuck. Nope, it's stripped. Let me try it one more time. Alright. Well, in reality, I'm not going to take the time to drill it out because we're replacing the cam plate anyway. So I'll just, we'll just run with it. And we do have a little bit of wear, probably about halfway through on this tensioner shoe. Chain itself doesn't look terrible. But on the tensioner shoe, I'll go ahead and show you guys that. We're probably about halfway through on the wear there. Surprise, surprise, kind of not surprised, right? So when we say that 2007 models had very common issues with crankshaft run out, not all of them had it, but a lot of them did. So I'm going to see if I can move the camera down here and let you guys see it inside the cam plate. You can see pretty well that it's off center relative. See the bushing on this side clearance, the bushing on that side, the clearance. Now watch when we rotate it. Now see how it opened up on this side and it's tight on that side, and we rotate it around. Now we're tight on this side and open over there. So that's the reason why I'm having a bit of a tough time getting this cam plate out, is I believe it's probably worn a pretty significant ridge onto this cam plate. There we go. But we've got a good bit of scoring here on the cam plate. Let's take a look at the oil pump, and considerably more black oil coming out of this thing, and we can see now. This is an important thing to show you guys. So we talk about crank run out and how important that is to maintaining a healthy oil pump. So I'm going to remove the inner gear rotor, and what we want to do is look at how much play we have in the outer. It has basically elongated the hole, so this thing's dancing all around in there, which this makes sense. Starving oil to the top end, they could, related to that push rod, whatever, but regardless, we had an oil pump that was about to let go, as well as a crank. Yeah, that oil pump is shot. Now let's measure the crank run out. And you can even see it. Oh, check this out, guys. The crank had shifted. All right, so yeah, no question here. Now notice here it's good, All right, this is the reason it's important to turn it over several times. All right, so here the rods feel okay. Let's move it around a revolution, and here, now the rods are stuck. So yes, this crank has shifted quite considerably, and oh, it locks up right there. 0 there. And we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, almost, yeah. Let's go back the other way if we can keep it going without the crank locking up on us. All right, we start at 0. And we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, wow. Well guys, I wasn't going to split the case on camera because we knew we had a bad crank. There was really no need to go any further. But I decided to go ahead and show you a couple of other things I discovered while I went through the parts here. First, you can see the tremendous amount of oil that is on top of the teardown table. Obviously from sumping. Yes, he did have a severe sumping problem. And we also, you can see the rods on the crank are stuck and the crank pin is shifted. This crank, because of the damage to the pinion shaft, this crank is garbage. So we're going to have to start with a brand new crank on this one. If you remember, I'd mentioned another common issue that I see on 110 Screaming Eagle heads is valve seats, valves, and valve guide problems, things like that. So let's take a look at this head here, and this is the front head. Remember, this is also the one that had the leaking compression release. But take a close look here at the exhaust valve. All right, you can see that valve is in there crooked and actually off the seat just a little bit on this side. It's in there at a pretty extreme angle. So more than likely we have excessive wear to the guide and the valve stem, but you can see again the valve seat has actually come up out of the head a little bit, and we can also see how far up the valve is in the chamber. Okay guys, this 2007 110 didn't disappoint. Unfortunately, 30 thousandths run out on the crank. Everything daisy chains from there. We got a bad cam plate, oil pump, the loose compression release. I'm sure the cylinders are off. I don't even need to check them. Now the interesting thing, as Michael, if he leaves a comment on here, he'll tell you the bike seemed to run pretty good. But he was right on the brink of mass destruction with the thing completely coming apart, potentially leaving him stranded. So this build is something that was required. The bonus is he gets a bulletproof replacement, making a heck of a lot more power than you would see on your typical 110. All right, that's going to complete the teardown for Michael from Michigan. Thank you very much, Michael. On the next one, we're doing another 110 where the top end had been done by others. And then so we're going to go back through it again and just check everything and see what's going on. And then we've got several other twin cam and M8s to tear down as part of this engine marathon, teardown marathon series. And as you can tell, there will be some surprises in store, guys. So if you haven't subscribed and you think I've earned it, please hit the button and don't forget to hit the reminder bell and select all notifications. That way when we post up the next video, you'll get to see it for yourself and stay up to speed on all of these. And then of course, after all these teardowns, we've got several builds coming as well. We've got one, actually Alan is right over there. We've got Alan's build getting ready to go together. We've got, which is the M8 with all the shavings. We got Bob's M8, we're bulletproofing over there. We've got Steven's coming. We got a whole bunch of builds coming along the way, as well as the Tool Tech Tuesdays with Gems. There's some awesome content coming with that. And then we've got a transmission we're going to tear down and rebuild as well in the next couple days. So ton of content coming, guys. Thanks a million to you guys for your support, all of your comments, and thanks a ton to all of our members as well for supporting the channel. Take care of yourselves and each other. You guys have a good one. See ya.